The man had not even reached the microphone before he started talking, and what came out of his mouth made the court reporter's fingers stop moving above her keyboard. Not because she missed it, because she needed a second to confirm that a human being had actually said it out loud, in a court of law, to a sitting judge, with a bailiff standing 4 feet away. The gallery, already murmuring from the moment this case was called, went razor quiet. Judge Frank Caprio looked up from his bench with the expression of a man who had heard almost everything in 30-plus years on the bench, and was now, for perhaps the first time in recent memory, genuinely curious about what was going to come next. He would not have to wait long, and neither, as it turned out, would justice. His name, according to the state of Rhode Island, was Calvin Theodore Briggs. According to Calvin Theodore Briggs, however, his name was Calvin Theodore, of the family Briggs, a living man and private sovereign national, not to be confused with the legal fiction Calvin Briggs as registered with the corporate state. He had written this on a handmade placard he held up when the clerk attempted to confirm his identity. The placard was laminated. He had prepared for this. He wore no tie, a wrinkled linen shirt with the top 2 buttons open, and the expression of a man who had rehearsed this moment in his bathroom mirror and was now very much enjoying the live performance. He was 48 years old and had been arrested 3 days prior on 2 outstanding warrants, one for unpaid court-ordered fines, one for operating a vehicle with a fraudulently altered registration, and was appearing before Judge Caprio for a bail determination hearing. If you have ever watched someone mistake a courtroom for a stage, drop a comment right now, because what Judge Caprio was about to do to Calvin Briggs's entire performance is the reason this channel exists. Subscribe before this is over, because justice, when it finally arrives, tends not to wait. The surface of the hearing was procedural. Bail needed to be set. The prosecutor presented the 2 warrants. Calvin Briggs had no criminal defense attorney. He had filed a handwritten motion the previous day declaring that he was appearing in propria persona as a sovereign flesh and blood man, and that any appointed counsel would constitute joinder with the corporate fiction. Judge Caprio acknowledged the filing without inflection. He asked Calvin to confirm his residence and employment for the bail assessment. This is where the performance began in earnest. "I do not consent to this jurisdiction," Calvin said clearly and calmly, as though this were simply a fact about the weather. "I am not the name on that warrant. I am a living man. This court operates under admiralty law. I invoke my common law right to—" "Mr. Briggs," Judge Caprio said, "Calvin Theodore of the family. Mr. Briggs." The repetition was not louder, it was slower, and the slowness was a wall. Calvin stopped. "Do you live in Providence?" the judge asked. Calvin placed a hand-typed document on the railing in front of him. "I have prepared a writ of habeas corpus and a notice of fault and opportunity to cure, which I would like entered into the record, establishing that my detention is unlawful under—" "Where do you sleep at night?" Judge Caprio asked. That's when everything changed, because the question was so simple, so utterly stripped of legal theater, that Calvin Briggs had no prepared answer for it. His mouth opened, closed. He looked at his laminated placard. He looked at the gallery. Somewhere in the second row, a man who appeared to have come specifically to watch this whispered something to the person next to him, and the person next to him covered their mouth. Calvin recovered. He lifted his chin, and then he said the thing that altered the temperature of the entire room. "I don't answer to fictions," he said, "and I don't answer to employees." He looked directly at Judge Caprio when he said it. "You work for the people. I am the people. So technically," he smiled, a bright and terrible smile, "you work for me." The courtroom went silent, not the polite quiet of procedural pause, the specific, dense silence of a gallery full of people who had just watched a man light a match inside a room he didn't understand was filled with gas. Frank Caprio sat with that silence for a long moment. He looked at Calvin Briggs without blinking, without shifting, with the absolute stillness of a man who had spent 30 years learning that the most powerful thing he could do in a courtroom was take his time. And then he spoke. "You're right that I work for the people," he said. "I've spent my entire career believing that. I've waived fines for single mothers who couldn't afford groceries. I've listened to veterans explain why they ran a red light at 2 in the morning trying to get to a hospital. I take that obligation seriously, every single day." He paused. "But you want to know what else the people need? They need a court system that means something. They need to know that when a judge sits at this bench, The law is real, the warrants are real, and the consequences are real. Because if this bench is a fiction, if this court is a fiction, then so is every protection it has ever given to every vulnerable person who walked through that door with nothing but the law between them and the people who had more power. Another pause, longer this time. You didn't come in here with a legal argument, Mr. Briggs. You came in here with a costume, and I've been on this bench long enough to know the difference between a man who doesn't understand the law and a man who has decided the law is only for other people. Calvin Briggs had stopped smiling somewhere around the word costume. His hand, still holding the laminated placard, lowered slowly to his side. Judge Caprio set bail at the full statutory amount, citing flight risk and the demonstrated pattern of evasion embedded in both warrants. He denied the handwritten habeas filing as procedurally defective and legally without basis, noted the decision in writing with a full explanation for appellate record, and ordered Calvin held pending a formal hearing on the underlying charges. He also requested that the clerk forward the fraudulent vehicle registration documentation to the State DMV Fraud Division. Calvin Briggs served 41 days before his case resolved. The fraudulent registration charge, when fully investigated, revealed that the same altered plate had been used to evade 3 toll systems across 2 states over 18 months. The fines compounded, the warrants multiplied. The laminated placard, last seen on the table in Courtroom 3, was logged as a personal effect and stored with the rest of what Calvin had brought in: the costume, the prepared lines, and the absolute certainty that the rules were a performance everyone else had agreed to, and he had not. He was wrong. He found that out the slow way. The law does not require your consent to apply to you. It never did. And the judges who understand that most deeply are always the ones who are also the most human, the ones who see through the theater, not because they are cold, but because they are clear. If this story moved you, share it. Comment below with what you would have said when Calvin called the judge his employee. Subscribe, because this channel is for every person who ever sat in that gallery and watched someone finally meet the thing they thought they'd outsmarted. Justice doesn't need a placard. It just needs time.